Did you know Sébastien Grosjean?
No.
I'm singing in the rain.
Oh non!
Nelson.
It is the foot, c'est le pied.
What? Aujourd'hui, je vais analyser l'anglais de Nelson Montfort. Oui, vous étiez nombreux à me demander d'analyser les interventions de Nelson pour déterminer s'il raconte n'importe quoi ou pas.
Et puis j'aimerais également remercier Luigi.
Nelson, il a remercié Jésus.
Bonjour à tous, moi c'est Gia, coach d'anglais avec 10 ans d'expérience internationale et francophone autodidacte. Je suis là pour vous aider à parler anglais de manière claire et naturelle. Alors activez les sous-titres si besoin parce qu'ici, pour apprendre l'anglais, on parle anglais. Let's start by having a quick look at Nelson's background and experience with English, and this should give us a kind of benchmark to help us decide how exactly we should judge his level. I have seen this video where Nelson confirms his origins.
To tell you the truth, English is my native tongue. En fait, c'est ma langue paternelle puisque mon père était citoyen américain. Donc je parlais en fait anglais à la maison avec mes parents. Ma mère d'origine néerlandaise et mon père américain, ils parlaient anglais entre eux, donc j'étais bercé dans la langue de Shakespeare.
So English is really a language that Nelson grew up speaking. So we should expect quite a high level from him. I would expect something similar to, for example, the children of parents who immigrate to a different country and who speak that language at home with their parents. But if they're not educated in that language or they don't use it in society, they might be missing maybe some cultural nuances or some higher level language. However, I can see from my old friend Wikipedia that apparently, Nelson went to the most expensive school in the world. L'Institut Le Rosé, c'est en Suisse, bien sûr.
Je suis suisse et j'ai les moyens.
Which makes me think that he likely did have a bilingual or an international kind of education. If you know anything about why or how Nelson managed to go to the most expensive school in the world, please tell me in the comments. I'm really interested. He spent 1 year in the States for an internship, but apart from that, it looks like he spent most of his life in France or in French-speaking countries. So let's keep that in mind moving forward. So now we know a little bit about Nelson's history or experience with the English language, but what's my first impression of his English? Let's have a look. And actually, it's kind of hard to find a video with a nice big chunk of him speaking English because he's always doing that kind of like back and forth translation thing. However, my friend has apparently found me a video with some nice complete sentences. So let's have a look.
I'm speaking in English, you answer in French.
Okay, feels like a classic Nelson sentence. I. Okay, he's already translating.
You have been injured recently. How are you recovering of your injury? It's very interesting because you're just 21 years old and you have a lot of maturity in the way you are answering.
Okay, so my first impression is that Nelson has very, very nice native-like pronunciation. He basically has an American accent, but I can really hear he's overpronouncing maybe some T's. For an American accent. Honestly, I think maybe he probably does this for clarity. For example, I heard him say, "You're just 21 years old." I would more expect an American to say 21. You're 21 years old. And he said you have a lot of maturity instead of maturity. I also heard his pronunciation of the TH sounds. Actually, he used a D sound. I speak about this in one of my videos, which I'll link up here. It's not a perfect TH, but it sounds very natural. Maybe he got this from his Dutch mother, I'm not sure. And it's when he said...
In the way you are...
In the way you are answering, the way. Much better than saying the way. Maybe a bit of a slip on a preposition. He said, how are you recovering of your injury? Here we would say recovering from your injury. Okay, so I can confirm so far that he has really nice pronunciation, native-like. He speaks very good English, but is he a good interpreter? I will remind you that speaking a language and being an interpreter are two very, very different things. So let's look at that next. Our first clip. And I do know this athlete. I don't know, I feel like the older I get, the more I watch athletics on television. I remember that this athlete this year at the Olympic Games was sick and so wasn't able to compete properly. So I guess that's what he's going to be talking about. Let's have a look.
The qualification height, 227, was very high. 2m27, c'était très haut en qualification.
Yeah, it was, it was normal. But, after 3 days ago, I was in the hospital and I was destroyed, honestly, because I didn't know if I would be able to be here. I saved myself, I swear to myself, for whatever I have done, for everything I have done in this year, I will be in that track.
En fait, oui, c'est vrai que la barre était haute, mais vous savez, il ne faut pas oublier qu'il y a encore 3 jours, j'étais à l'hôpital et je me suis dit que tous les efforts faits pour cette année ne seraient pas vains et que je tenais absolument à être ici.
Okay, look, overall, yes, he translated very well what the athlete said. However, one part a little bit strange to me, Nelson's question was...
The qualification height, 227, was very high.
And the athlete replied...
Yeah, it was, it was normal.
So I guess for this athlete, a normal height. And Nelson's translation was...
En fait, oui, c'est vrai que la barre était haute.
Which is kind of a bit strange. It feels to me like Nelson here is maybe asking kind of like a leading question being like a question that you ask in a certain way to encourage someone to give the answer that you expect. For example, a leading question being like, wow, aren't these cakes delicious? I mean, now I'm not really giving you the chance to share your real opinion because you already know that I think they're delicious. So if you say they're not, then you're going to open up a kind of argument, if that makes sense. Maybe not the best journalistic technique, but ultimately kind of low stakes. So, all right, Nelson, we'll let it slide. Let's see what he says next.
We wish you to rest during 48 hours and we'll see you in the final. Reposez-vous bien pendant 48 heures, on verra en finale.
Okay, so I just want to comment on what Nelson said here.
We wish you to rest during 48 hours and we'll see you in the final.
This is a little bit unnatural, and I think maybe what's happening here is that he's having a bit of French interference, which happens to the best of us. You can see he's really thinking in English and in French. Here we're talking about this, it's more like a duration. So for 48 hours, or maybe even better, over the next 48 hours. Also this beginning part of the sentence, we wish you to. It would probably be most natural to say, we hope you can get some rest over the next 48 hours and we'll see you in the final. This sounds much more natural, conversational, completely appropriate for this kind of interview. Okay, so a good first interview. It's a slight leading question, but that's all right. Let's see another athlete.
Mademoiselle Richardson, USA, sur le podium du 200 mètres. Wow, 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 what a race this was.
Oh my gosh, it was a phenomenal race. Great competition, amazing women, and amazing atmosphere.
Extraordinaire, une compétition formidable. Amazing women, ça veut dire avec des concurrentes, n'est-ce pas, tout à fait extraordinaire. You finished third, I believe, hein, vous êtes troisième.
Okay, so a really good start. I think he's translating really well. And here we have a native English speaker, and she actually has quite a difficult, maybe not difficult, not the easiest accent to understand. So I think Nelson's doing really, really well interacting with her so far. Let's see what happens next.
Regardez ces magnifiques zones qui sont filmées par Adrien Noël. These bring you luck.
Oh my gosh, probably so. But definitely, I love my appearance. I love that I can be myself authentically on the track, and just my performance speaks for itself as well.
Alors, j'aime mon apparence qui parle pour moi sur le terrain et qui me porte chance.
Okay, I feel like we have another leading question here from Nelson. So I have actually seen this athlete before. She's really eccentric. She has really crazy hair, like really cool nails, which I think is awesome because I really recognize this athlete. And he asks about her nails. Well, actually, he says, these bring you luck. Again, kind of like suggesting that he thinks she wears them because they bring her luck. And she said,
probably so.
Probablement. And that she does like her appearance, but that her performance speaks for itself. So she's grateful that she can express herself and wear what she wants because it doesn't really matter what she looks like. she has a good performance that speaks for itself. I feel like Nelson's translation doesn't really honor that. We had
J'aime mon apparence qui parle pour moi
but doesn't really talk about her performance, right?
et qui me porte chance.
She never said that. She just said, yeah, probably it brings me luck. So again, he's asked this leading question. And then when she just kind of says, yeah, maybe, he says, oui, je l'aime bien, ça me porte chance. Again, it's pretty low stakes. Doesn't really, the message is there, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know about this one. Guys, tell me what you think in the comments. Let's move on to our next clip. And we have Tobogo, winner of the 200 meters. Okay, cool. Let's see.
For me and Bednarek, I would say it's a back and forth relationship. You know, we beat each other on the 200, but I know I have that better top end spin than him, so I use that against him. So I won the race.
Okay, so guys, you might have noticed already that this athlete is from Botswana, and while I believe English is spoken in Botswana, this accent is definitely not something I think that many Europeans are used to hearing when we think of English, for example, like an American accent, a British accent. So it might be a bit of a challenge. Let's see how Nelson does.
Nous sommes souvent affrontés avec Bednarek sur le 200 mètres. La plupart du temps, c'est moi qui l'ai emporté sur lui et j'ai utilisé ça pendant la course. We're very happy for you.
Okay, so overall, again, not a bad interpretation of what the athlete has said. Again, this athlete does have maybe an atypical kind of accent, something we're not used to hearing. So I think Nelson did very, very well at listening and translating. However, there was one thing that I noticed. Explaining his rivalry with one of the other athletes, Bednarek. He said that they often beat each other, or they sometimes one will win, sometimes the other will win, which I think Nelson summarized well. But Tobogo said,
I have that better top end spin than him, so I use that against him, so I won the race.
Nelson's translation was,
Nous sommes souvent affrontés avec Bednarek sur le 200 mètres. La plupart du temps, c'est moi qui l'ai emporté sur lui et j'ai utilisé ça pendant la course.
again, it's maybe not honoring the strategy of the athletes, but overall, okay, not a bad interpretation. Okay, so we've seen a few examples. So what is my overall opinion of Nelson's interpreting skills? I think given the conditions that he's in, he's doing a pretty good job. Interpreters do not usually take an active role in the conversation that they are interpreting. They usually sit there like a human computer. They listen and they try to regurgitate, hopefully, the exact message that they have heard. And interpreters usually work under conditions designed to make this as easy as possible. I'm sure maybe you've seen in the European Parliament, there are what I suppose appear to be at the back of the room soundproof booths where the interpreters sit with nice headphones on, they have a microphone, they've often got a pen and a paper to make sure that they can keep up with the pace of the conversation. Now, Nelson doesn't have any of this. He needs to ask the question, translate the question, listen to the response, translate the response, and still remember the next question that he wants to ask. So I think we can probably forgive him for making some mistakes, maybe missing a few things, asking maybe a few leading questions. Maybe he does that because it helps him to anticipate the response he's going to get, which makes the translation a little bit easier. Who knows? And of course, he does speak very good English. I think most importantly, he has really clear pronunciation, which is important when you are interviewing global athletes. And his comprehension is also really, really good. I have to say that most times when I have seen a different journalist try to do a Nelson-style interview, it doesn't go quite as smoothly.
Is the first step of a journey in Paris will be very, very goldy? I'm sorry?
Regardless of the fact that Nelson's interview technique is a little bit strange and certainly makes for some awkward moments.
Temps de 19 secondes et 32 centièmes. Oh no, Michael, just an answer.
I think it's maybe that really human side that has made him so beloved by the French public. People in general seem to really like him, and I think by extension, it perhaps makes them a little bit more interested in some of these sporting events. You might think, for example, I don't know anything about long jump, but look, it's Nelson on the TV. He's somebody who's like really built up trust with the French public. And I think that ultimately has a positive impact in terms of promoting sports. So, do you agree? Do you disagree with my analysis? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Nelson, est-ce qu'il raconte n'importe quoi? No, not really. Mais parfois quand même. If there are any other French athletes, personalities, celebrities whose English you would like me to analyze, let me know in the comments. I'll see you again soon. Bye!